Hi, Soul Tribe. Thank you so much for joining Phil Rice and myself today. This is a really exciting topic that Phil and I have been just dying to share with you guys. And I can see Tim asking, let me just pop your comment up, Tim. What are the telepathy tapes? So before we go too into it, I just want to read Phil's bio, just in case a couple of you may not have seen him before. So we've had him on Maison Jupiter as well, and he's also been on my show. So Phil is a dedicated Reiki teacher and practitioner with a passion for exploring spiritual experiences, with a diverse background that includes a career in corporate heavy machinery sector, as well as 10 years as a music teacher. So Phil is also my friend. I just want to add that in too. We've been friends for many years. And so it's such a lovely thing to be able to have him on the show. And Phil combines technical insight with strong teaching skills to guide others on individual journeys. So in addition to offering meditation instruction, Phil shares insights and interviews through popular YouTube channel and Substack blog, making spiritual exploration accessible to the wider audience. His approach to energy and healing and treatments is continuously enriched by ongoing studies and practices in energetics, internal alchemy, hermetics, Kabbalah, Qigong, Tai Chi, Tarot, and the I Ching, and maybe other esoteric wisdom and many other esoteric wisdom sources. So initially drawn to energy healing after a series of satisfying internal success, Phil quickly discovered the potential for transformative power of these practices. Throughout his journey, he has encountered numerous profound experiences, including out-of-body journeys, prophetic dreams, interaction with spiritual entities, meditation, yogic phenomena, and many surprising opportunities, all of which have been deepened with his commitment to exploring the greater reality and the continued development of himself throughout evolving daily cultivation practices. So he is dedicated to sharing his experience and methods with the intention of assisting others, genuine seekers, navigate their own unique paths in discovery and healing. Phil is available in person and online for consultations, readings, instruction, and treatments from his hometown of Harwick in Auckland, New Zealand. And I just want to bring up a few things that we have to share for you, Phil. And we have your bookings. So for anyone wanting to reach out to Phil for bookings, where do they go, Phil?
Okay, so I've just done some more tidying up on the Setmore app. So you can go to philrice.setmore.com, and I've got a range of services there, mostly sort of broad spectrum shamanic types as far as energy healing, readings, I guess, types of, spiritual guidance in a sense, helping people find peace and stillness and giving them insight. A big part of what I love to do is to explore the mechanics and principles underlying meditation to help, people have a meaningful and satisfying understanding of, what are we actually doing when we do this? So yeah, thank you for that. So there's that. And then there's the philrice.substack, and the wonderful YouTube channel. Sorry, yes, the Substack, which I'm always playing with because I'm exploring how to make it look nice. At the moment, it's I guess I'm not sure what that color is, but sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's white. But yeah, this is a fun place because it's sort of my my default website, and yeah, my YouTube here, which is just doing pretty well actually. I'm supporting several communities, but largely it's the Hermetics, Kabbalah, and Reiki, and slowly leaking into the Reiki community. But it's a Franz Baden system that I've fallen in love with, and it's helped me to understand Reiki from more of a Western perspective. So yeah, I've got a lot of stuff going on. So please, everyone, go and check out all the stuff. There's heaps to explore. I've had some incredible guests on to talk about so many different topics. I've got my own, I do interviews, but I also like to drop some, I guess you might call them influencer type things too, to sort of help encourage and inspire, because the practices are quite involved. And so as a guitar teacher in the past, it falls upon me to sort of continuously nourish people with just stuff to help keep them on track with their practice and that. And I just love it. It's a wonderful community. And thank you so much for having me on, Solreta, my wonderful, beautiful friend. It's always a pleasure to be here. And this is a really exciting topic. I want to say hi, everyone in the chat. You've got one of the coolest audiences. I want to say thank you, everyone, for coming along. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys. It's always a fun time. And this is a really cool topic, and I can't wait to get into it. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm well. And I know that like we've been talking the last couple of weeks about telepathy tapes and things and like really diving into it. It's so exciting to be able to share this with the audience. And yeah, it's just fun because I get to hang out with my friend too. So thank you for
Oh,
joining
yeah.
us. I'm going to bring up the telepathy tape so people know what it is that we're talking about. Let me just pop this little window up. And I think your internet might be a little bit laggy today, Phil. So hopefully it gathers some strength and we can get through. So this
Yeah.
is the Telepathy Tapes website. Let me just copy and paste it and I'll pop it in the chat for you guys so that you've got the link. And this is a series by Kai Dickens. So Kai Dickens has really dove into kids that are struggling with autism or that are nonverbal, and what she actually discovered was that these kids are communicating telepathically. So a lot of, I guess,
Mm.
the how would we say, like the boards and the people that sort of reside over looking after a lot of these beautiful special kids have shut down things like telepathy, and tried to, I guess, keep these kids in an education system that's very much just focused on your ABCs and that. And what they've discovered is that some of these kids have wisdom beyond the ages. And what they've also discovered is that these kids will communicate psychically or telepathically, I would say in the quantum, because it feels much more than just telepathy that we're talking about here. But some of
Mm.
these kids will meet at a meeting place called the Hill. And so
Mm.
Phil and I are going to dive into this today and just discuss and talk about. But yeah, here for anyone wanting to find it, it is on Audible, it is on Spotify. As I said to Phil, like when I was starting to get into it, I keep hearing about people saying you need a whole day to set aside to just to dive into this. And when I started, oh my gosh, you can't switch it off. You're like, I need to hear what's happening in the next episode. So Kai, she's done such an amazing job just slowly like dipping your toe in the water, introducing you to the topic of telepathy, and then just it gets more and more heated up as you go, and it's an emotional journey. And for me, having abilities since I was a kid and having worked with nonverbal autistic kids as well, this is just, it's amazing. It's amazing for the parents, it's amazing for the kids to have their voices heard, and they very, very clearly can speak telepathically to the mind. It's just a matter of us actually opening our awareness, opening our consciousness, which is really strange because this week, for the last 3 days, I've had like a magnetic pulsation around the third eye. And I've
Mm.
seen on Facebook, others are having the same. What's your take on it all, Phil? What was it that really, got you excited about this?
Well, I've worked in schools as a music teacher, as an itinerant guitar teacher, and well, as just music teaching. But what I will say is this: this, in my view, is, and I'll just drop this: nature strikes back, because where you've got a blanket education system that is essentially, some would argue, is based on the industrial revolution sort of educational model of making certain shapes to fill roles, which may have been suitable for a while. And now that can be extrapolated and elaborated on at a much greater rate too. But where I'm going with this is that, as there is and we're aware, like, the education system is very particular about the kind of shapes that it wants to put out into society. And after I've got a friend who does Waldorf homeschooling, which is the Rudolf Steiner learning system, and that
Yeah.
is very different. Now it's a ministry approved education system, but I'll bring it back around and I'll say this: is that if there is some intentional effort to sort of suppress the natural capability development of young children to become sort of more psychically aware, like if it's a natural thing that's being suppressed, you can only push down so long before the other side starts to rise up. And what I'm seeing here is that because, why are there more autistic children or ADHD? Now, we could apportion to certain institutions involving sort of artificial chemical sort of things, and also, whatever. But I feel that, like I said, nature strikes back, and it's just bringing a balance in. And the more you push down, the more it pops up the other side. And so there's essentially these kids are like, this is, and remember, the one thing about these tapes is that it's not like, oh yeah, they get it right 30 or 40% of the time, which is still quite a statistically significant sort of like, bit of a data there. This is like 90 plus. And in a lot of cases, it's like they're hitting the mark every time. This is highly significant. And this is like, I mean, they're attempting to reduce, as far as the testing conditions go, they're doing their best to be as robust as possible with their methodology, because basically trying to present material to a very rigid existing paradigm of thinking that just doesn't want to budge on this a bit. And there is great effort to ensure that there is no sort of peer discussion in the academic community. And so, the lady doing this has got tenure as in Johns Hopkins University, or she did. And on the website, she's been she has had a hit job done on her. When hit job, well, I call it job because it starts with an
hominid. We're just losing you with your mic. It's just getting a lot of static and feedback. I might get you to adjust, and then we might come back to that in a second. Okay. But yeah, I just want to sort of build on what you were saying there. Just hopefully the sound will kind of sort itself out in a second for you. So what Phil was saying was that, there has been, I guess there was some fear around releasing this kind of information. And, we've got speech pathologists, we've got, I guess, aides that are also working with the children in the classroom. So some of these people were experiencing incidences or multiple cases of telepathy with some of these kids. And in some situations, this is going back for even 30 years that people have been working as an aide with a child in a classroom, or, with multiple kids and experiencing telepathy. And I remember one of the situations that they talk about in the actual tapes, I forget which episode it is, I've probably got a note of it. And I don't want to give too many spoiler alerts, but there was a situation with the classroom where the kids were trying to get a message to the teacher telepathically. And one of the kids that was a little bit verbal in the classroom was clapping and saying, yay, she got it, she heard us. I think it was something of that kind of remark. So some of these kids are really trying to reach the parents, they're trying to reach the teachers. A lot of them are poets as well. So they write poetry. Some of them write music and will download the music in dreams, because some of these kids are communicating to parents in lucid dreams and actually giving them like full-blown messages. Even myself last week, after listening to the telepathy tapes, I had a really strange dream experience where I was laying in bed at night, and for hours on end, I kept getting shown this vision. It was almost like a black kind of mound shape, and I kept seeing fire or red sky in the background, and all of this ash. Imagine like lighting a tissue on fire, and you've got the remnants of that ash sort of floating. So yeah, interesting with the fires that we've seen over the last couple of days, to do with what's happening in Los Angeles and things, because in this message, okay, I'm just seeing Phil's message. Thank you, Phil. We'll pop Phil out for a second, and hopefully he blinks back in with better audio. Thanks, Phil. So anyway, yeah, some of these kids can actually work with those that are sensitive and open and bring messages in the dream state. So let me share why Phil's popped out for a moment. One of my experiences must have been 20 years ago, with a beautiful young boy who was nonverbal. He could stand up and he could have like minimal sort of movement, wavering back and forth like a dolphin. And making dolphin and whale type sounds, although he was extremely psychic and extremely telepathic. So I'm just sharing a little story of an interaction I had with a beautiful boy about 20 something years ago. Anyway, so this little boy, he was able to project the image of a little white terrier dog and saying, "This is my dog, Charlie." And so I was just relaying the messages back to his grandmother and mother. And sure enough, he had a little terrier called Charlie. He showed me a beautiful big balloon, a yellow balloon in his room, saying it was one of his favorite things. And he also showed me a water feature fountain that was in his room. And he was expressing that he was getting a little bit annoyed because his family kept forgetting to turn it on. And they were just amazed because it was exactly the situation, what was happening. So some people that are sensitive, and many of the parents and the people that are working with these kids, they're really attuning. And what I want to say, if this is something that you're trying to crack the code on how to do, or you're trying to work out how to expand your energy field to be able to communicate more with these beautiful souls, it's all in the heart. It's the same as when I've worked with animals for animal communication as well. We need to drop our consciousness into the place of the heart. And a lot of the messages that we're receiving, there's some either electrical or magnetic signal that or field that we're communicating in. But yeah, I've really noticed when you empty and you open yourself and you're in that space of the heart, the messages can come thick and fast. So I just wanted to talk about that while we're waiting for things to hopefully unglitch. How's it on your end now, Phil?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm a little clearer. I mean, hey, let us know, guys, if I'm glitching out a little bit.
The fog
So
is
I
gone.
can. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So this is something that's really worth paying attention to, especially if you've got children, because in the initial telepathy tapes in the earlier episodes, especially in the first one or the first two, I think there's a relationship of communication between the child in question and specific family members. Sometimes all of them, but not always, it would seem. And considering how influential the close family unit is in the formative years up to about the age of 7-ish, as the Jesuits say, give me the child until 7 and I will show you the man. Essentially, there's a lot of deeply embedded programs that just naturally occur by almost osmosis, which are going to last a long time. So that first bunch of years, teach your children well, people, because they're going to be carrying a lot of that stuff for a long time, and undoing a lot of those things can take some real work. But here's the thing. There's conscious telepathy and then there's unconscious telepathy. So this conscious telepathy where the kids, where, mum's like, oh, she's stressed out. She's got bills, she's got problems, all these types of things. The kid's picking up on that and they're being influenced by that essentially as well. And so that could actually be feeding into their growth pattern, if you will. And so, yeah, okay, mum can say, okay, I've hidden the cookies. They'll never find them. No, they do. They can understand. They know. They
Yeah.
read that. They're hearing everything. They're being influenced. And, especially if maybe one of the parents is a little bit on the darker side, perhaps, they're one of the, I think it was the second or the third one with the young fella Houston. The dad was
Oh
apparently not
yeah.
a nice person. And so he was able to navigate that though too. And I think too, because there was this collective pocket, the hill, if you will, where they were catching up,
Mhm.
they were probably helping each other to manage reality a little. And I would say too that I think that they're on top. I mean, I haven't listened. I'm about halfway through the podcast series, but oh my gosh, I mean, there's so much we can talk about even just with that. But I
And
think
it
that
just
there is
gets better and better. I can't wait for you to get to the end because it's incredible. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, totally. I think what it is that there's this group of people. I mean, there is an intelligence in the conversation that exceeds what you would expect from like a 4-year-old. Of like
Yeah.
like in one of them I've just recently listened to, the kid's 4, and he's saying to the therapist he's been assigned to, you're here to help me connect with my body, because essentially they're more up in the mental space, which in Hermetics is spaceless, right? They're saying that there are no dimensions in that. We're in this sort of floaty thing, and you're here to help me find my body. And it's like, oh, I need to tell your mum about this. And the kid's like, no, they're not ready yet. you know. And so the therapist, it's kind of like, they're like, wow, this is really exciting. And it's also like, yeah, but this is a burden too, because in a sense, you've got to do your job. You've got a duty to help this child out. And as a natural kind of byproduct, I mean, you're going to have to end up talking to people because the therapist themselves is going to need some support. And I think, you know, when you listen to these tapes and the people in the film crew and the production crew that are traveling with the ladies are, you know, they start to become part of the story. And so you really start to experience what's going on quite, I think, almost viscerally, because I mean, I haven't seen any of the video footage yet. Have you seen any of the video footage?
I've got some to share. Let me pop this on for reference as well. And
Oh,
I'll just
beautiful.
have to, I've got to pop it in so we can get the actual audio to do with this. All right. So this will also be good to listen to.
My son said to me, I can hear thoughts. And I said, impossible. And he said to me, you don't get the kind of gifts that I have if you lie.
Let's please multiply two numbers and see if he gets it.
Okay, what is it?
9 0 0.
Unbelievable.
1.
Maybe shuffle again, Dr. Powell.
Plus 2.
So he got the plus too.
I was wondering, because I was looking at the 2 the whole time, and I saw his hand going somewhere else.
What is this phenomena happening? Why are his mind and my mind completely connected?
I knew that a lot of people would think, boy, Diane's gone off the deep end. But
That's the risk any scientist takes when they challenge the current paradigm.
Joining us today to shed some light, Dr. Diane Powell.
I'm working with children who have been reported by a parent to be able to read their mind.
The data was so compelling and accurate that I had to follow it, even though I knew I was risking my scientific reputation.
I started testing them and I found that they were exceedingly accurate.
What is the next number?
After the medical board took my license away, I had to prove my sanity. Once I did, I said, I'm going to prove that ESP is real.
Dr. Tarrant, he's done these QEEG scans to see what's going on.
The biggest overall finding is really this increase of activation across all the brain waves. If there was no change, I would definitely be skeptical.
If you can show a consistent pattern, particularly from kid to kid, that's how science changes. You cannot fake this.
We want answers like, where does it comes from? I want to know how and what are we supposed to do?
We can't all be crazy.
We are far more powerful than we can imagine, and the implications are huge for humanity and the planet.
Oh my gosh, it makes me so emotional watching that.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, especially having had interactions with some of these beautiful kids. And it's really interesting, they respond quite, you know how sometimes you'll have where they won't look at you. What I've seen is sometimes with light language, they'll actually directly stare at you and you can feel them telepathically. And yeah, what I remember years and years ago, that incident's happening where one of the mums was friends with me and she's like, can you just try and see if anything happens? And she's like, he's not looked at anyone like that for like quite a while. And unfortunately in that situation, it was after certain things going into the body that he became nonverbal and started to experience things. But with diet change and heavy metal detox and things slowly started to reverse, luckily. But with meeting these kids and working with some of them, what I must say is that it's like they're existing, as you were saying, Phil, on such a high level that it's really, really hard to condense such a big soul and big electricity down into the nervous system of a human body. And a lot of these kids don't realize that they actually have physical bodies, is what you discover listening to the telepathy tapes. Even myself, and to doing somatic therapy last year, I'm like, I didn't realize I don't live in my body.
Yeah. So, you know, towards the, you know, like I said, I'm halfway through and I've tried like having it running in the background while I'm doing things and paying attention, but there's important nuance and subtlety that I have to just basically focus on this, because there's little hints and things. And one of those things is that there's the presence of synesthesia. Okay. Now, for those who don't know what synesthesia is, it's essentially a form of cross-modal sensory input, which means you can see colors and you can smell shapes, and there's all sorts of derivations of this. But in 3-point concentration, which is what we practice in the Franz Baden School of Hermetics, where essentially our mental body is responsible for sort of like, let's say, just colors and abstract thought. Now, one of the therapists was saying that he was giving her instruction and he wanted colors. Now, his mental body needs to see these colors to almost like grab on, okay? And then there's a sound attached to it as well. Now, as we move down into form, there needs to be something for the form body or the astral body to sort of grab onto. And then they were talking about sounds and particular tones. And there was a tone or a frequency for the mental body or the spirit, and one for the physical body. And playing these to get right. Okay, that's it. So, there's in Kabbalah, in the Franz Baden system, each one of these letters that we attribute to, because it was so interesting, because even the doctor or the professor lady was saying that, when you mention a letter, she sees, or the child would see a color. And she even said the letter A, which is, she said blue. Now, this was the doctor, but that's just funnily enough, like that is related. A is the air element color, and that has a blue hue to it. Now, for me, what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a lot of comparative types of, a lot of parallels between what's happening and how we would view this from a Hermetic point of view, which is like, okay, so they're occupying the mental space, but they're struggling to sort of be in their body. And that's why their bodies are just doing these other things. There's not the spirit hasn't got control over it. It hasn't grounded itself. And so what they do is that they train a function to become essentially efficient and proficient in managing that body. And then once they've got that, cool, okay, now let's work on the next level down. What do we need to do for this? And let's work on the next level down. So, but that's me going on a bit of a tangent there. I wanted to say that this is really great stuff, because there's a huge amount of effort to make this information presented in the most credible way possible. Because, man, I tell you what, you can tell someone if they walk off that cliff, gravity is gonna take them, or that, don't do that because this happens, and man, they still won't believe you because they've been conditioned to think a certain way. And so sometimes to change a paradigm, there needs to be almost like a relentless barrage of information to help cause correction in people's thinking, because they're so hardwired to think a certain way. And so the more of this kind of information is available, widespread, there's money raised through crowdfunding to create, like I said, high quality production and presentation. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of glossy BS out there as well, that isn't founded in something that's, highly methodical and reliable. But what I've listened to so far, from my skeptical point of view, I think that, we've all seen those 5-year-old kids in China who can play guitar better than Eddie Van Halen almost, or they, like, how did they do that? They came in with something. There's savants who, I've seen this guy who was autistic, and he could play a piece of classical music, a very complicated piece of classical music. He could play in the style of Bach, of Mozart, of Tchaikovsky, you name it. And he can just instantly do it. It's as fast as that chat GPT can spit out a response, and
amazing.
Those are a little bit outside of this topic of conversation. But what it is here is like, I mean, I do a little bit of this on my channel where I'll help people develop their ESP, because that's a good category to sort of put this into. I kind of think that, where humanity's happening next, if there was going to be some kind of naturally emerging psychic skill, I've had this experience in my own personal experience is that telepathy is going to be one of the forerunners of, I guess, the fight back against the oppression of the human potential.
Yeah, definitely. And you've just reminded me to share.
Yes.
We do have the How to See Auras course still available. So, the timing of things like this coming out and the timing of the telepathy tapes, it really is because we're heading in this new direction where we're going to be multi and super sensory as well. So it's definitely time for humanity to start to upgrade. So yeah, so much amazing feedback coming from this course too. And Phil's right, it's definitely time to develop ESP and things like that. We're still having your side glitch out a tiny little bit, Phil, but the sound's coming through okay. I just wanted to let you know. And I also wanted to share with you guys too that we had a taste test just over the weekend, which was a lot of fun to be in store at Haunted Antiques and to be sharing and talking potions with people. And I just had to remind people, because they might not have seen it, but we do have a community event coming up very, very shortly. So all the details are on Soul Alchemy Potions, and you will see that if you purchase a potion, you actually will get a private invite to join us. We're going to have like a multi-video experience, which we did last year, but this one's going to be all around the new moon. It's all topicked around Phoenix rising, renewal, revision, and reinvest in yourself. So we're going to be doing some activities together live and online, which will be a lot of fun. So just had to mention that. And just building on what you were also saying about with the tuning fork side of things. So what one of the kids told the therapist in one of the therapy sessions telepathically, and I also should say that these kids are called spellers, because you saw in the little video, they had the little board and they were pointing to like one, or they were pointing to, plus signs and letters and things, or iPads. So this is what's actually given kids a voice. And with the mainstream, I guess, Western approach, a lot of these kids are not able to, or have not been given the ability to be able to use these spelling boards. And they've found that when they've given the kids these things, that they actually are, confirming or affirming to parents that, this telepathic conversation that's going on. So anyway, what I wanted to say with the tuning forks, if you guys have got these, or you've got crystal singing bowls or different things that work on certain frequencies. So I actually just did a muscle test through the week and asked, what note do I need to play for my body? And I got, let me see what it was. I got G, which is throat chakra. And then for my soul, to integrate the two, you play the two tuning forks together. So I'm just going to play this so you guys can actually get like a visceral kind of audio experience. So this would be blending of my soul and my body together. And this is just so that you integrate the two. And what's interesting, I do feel like a difference harmonically in my body, and also like a different reverberation going on around where we have all of these crystals, and we have our psychic senses seated in the sinuses too. So yeah, it could be a different sound for each person, depending on like the frequency of our soul and the frequency of our body. But that's something fun that you guys can do at home. If you've got anything that's like set on the musical scale, you can test out one for your body, one for your soul. Hopefully your videos improved a little bit. What was your favorite thing so far in listening to the telepathy tapes?
Well, I can just say I can try dropping the video resolution down, which may improve the video.
Oh,
Make it look a
okay.
bit scratchy. I'll try that out if you like. Let's try
Thanks,
that.
Phil.
No worries. Let me know, because the other thing I can do is I can actually turn the video off and just do audio. I'd rather have my beautiful face on the screen here, not a narcissist.
Your beautiful face too.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, it came to me years ago. Actually, I've had some dreams about this too. That like I said before, one of the forerunners of the potential of humans to sort of like make everyone go, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what we were taught. This isn't what people talk about. Because obviously, you know, in some countries and cultures, as soon as a child starts demonstrating some kind of psychic ability, right, we've got a situation for that. Off to the monastery you go. They know how to work with that, because when people become hypersensitive or sensitive to subtle realities, or, you know, like, it can be quite overwhelming. And so they need to be trained to manage the data coming in. And please let me know if I'm glitching out, because I'll just drop the video, mate, so I can keep talking.
No,
So
it's still, your audio is coming through fine though.
okay. So, you know, like I said, it's really great that parents who are interested in exploring, because you got to remember, a lot of people, when they're maybe in their 20s and they're having kids, man, you know, they have their children, and then then they're off to school. The parents are working hard to pay off the mortgage, and, you know, time spent, you know, they're essentially outsourcing their child's early development to people they don't know, people with different values, people with different worldviews. And this is, like I say to people, you just, you know, the child is seeing you endorse this other group, okay? Unconsciously even, oh, mum and dad are sending me here, so they must approve of this thing. But when I come home and I tell them, they go, oh, wait a minute, no, that's not right. And the child can be confused. So whatever your situation you're putting your child into, do you, you know, would you, you know, I'm sure you're very particular about what your child eats. What about what they put in their mind, and who are you giving them to put stuff in their mind? Do you know, would you give your children to a babysitter or someone who is going to influence the way that they think and how their logic mechanics are hardwired in at an early stage, if you don't understand what's going on? This is why I'm saying to people, look, when it comes to the telepathy tapes, right, if these kids, okay, if they're consciously able to read minds, okay, you need to manage your thoughts. Man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain, because those thoughts are going to go, they're going out that way. You're putting them into the mental space. They're not just your property, they're affecting others as well. You know, like, I mean, I've had this thing. I had a picture of a body of water and a wharf on my phone come up years ago, and it reminded me of a friend who I was talking to about some water filters. And I was like, oh, yeah, my bro. And then literally 2 seconds later, that guy called me. Right? Now, whether he was intending to or not, that's a whole nother story. But if we are able to project out, if you will, even though it's a spaceless environment from a hermetic view, some kind of like prompt or influential prompt that people take action on, because sometimes people will just act on an instinct or an urge or something like that, then it's like, oh crap, you know, if I'm potent in respect, you know, I don't want to be causing problems out there, because then that gets involved in karma, you know, and this type of thing, right? And so people who have these abilities, knowingly especially, you know, they're held to a slightly different standard in the big scheme of things. So it's great, yeah, I can do all this cool stuff, and it's like, yeah, bro, but you've also got more influence points. And so, you know, you're playing in a bigger sandpit, and there's bigger supervisors and accountants and checks and balances. So, you know, one thing I would suggest to people, if you would like to go, you know what, I probably need to manage my mental environment a bit more, because there's some funky stuff going on in there, and I need to deal with that, because I don't want my kids picking up on that. Because you know what happens is later on, when they're teenagers and stuff, they're going to have enough to deal with. They don't need to carry all your stuff. What I'm saying is that sitting there and just watching your thoughts create the gap, it's a very old skill. It's Vipassana, it's mindfulness. When you have it explained to you properly, it's very obvious. Basically, your mind is responding. If you keep thinking about certain things, it's going to keep giving you those kinds of thoughts. Yeah. And so when you spend time just simply observing them without touching them or engaging them, you know, you create a space between you and the thing. It's like, oh, there's a thought. Oh, that's nice. I don't have to act on it or react to it. You know, I can just watch it. And then your mind goes, oh, well, you're not really getting into that. So I guess we'll flick that off. Okay, what about this? Oh, you're spending more time thinking about that stuff. Okay, let's do that. But on the flip side as well, there's unconscious telepathy, where you know how like you read a newspaper, right? And your conscious mind is looking at a particular ad and you're reading that. Your unconscious is picking up everything else on the page. And that is being stored. And, you know, that's that whole subliminal programming. You know, you don't recognize how symbolism of a scene in a movie or a picture on a page, or there's like, why is there a shape of a phallus in that whiskey glass from that ad from the 70s? You know, why is there all this creepy, weird sort of like stuff in these old Disney flicks, and probably in modern ones too, that had to be pointed out to me by someone who went frame by frame through the thing, right? And so this unconscious thing is like, you know, the kid's not consciously telepathic. You know, they're not like, say, the savants or the telepaths and the telepathy tapes that we're talking about, but they are being influenced by the thoughts naturally, just by the fact you're having them. And you're like going, you know, you don't have to say things to influence your kids. They can pick up on body language, on your feelings as well. You know, a highly charged, you know, your emotional body is your energy body, as we say. It's the chi body, and that has potency in it too. And some people are much more potent than what they realize. Some people are very talented in certain ways, but because they don't learn about this stuff, they don't learn how to manage it. And so they're kind of rocking around haphazardly and like a bull in a china shop. And they're just being themselves. But that, you know, seriously, guys, there's never been a better time than now to start refining yourself. There's basically two things that you work on. There's refinement and empowerment. You want to be more potent. You want to have more capability to do more good in the world. Awesome. You need to, if you're going to strap a rocket pack on your back, you need to make sure you got your navigation system down, because otherwise you're just going to be firing all over the place and causing problems. So this is, like I said, we have a responsibility for the thoughts we choose to entertain. And but anyway, to answer your question, I just love people wanting to explore how they can create a robust presentation for the naysayers, just to show that the naysayers are they're not even willing to entertain it, because it just is, okay, well, we want to find the people that are real, you know, because some people are just going to be bricks. And even if you levitated in front of them, that still wouldn't be enough.
Yeah. And I've seen, you know, situations where there's UFOs in front of people, and certain people on a different frequency can't see them when they're right in front of it. So, you know, there definitely is different levels of consciousness and different levels of awareness and different belief systems, I think, that will either interfere or intervene. I think we're sort of getting past the time for waiting for people to catch up. And I think that's why it's perfect timing that the telepathy tapes are coming to the surface and coming into the mainstream, and just surpassed Joe Rogan's podcast as well, in terms of like that. I'm not sure if it was for the week or for the month, but there was more listeners tuning into the telepathy tape. So it just shows how much our souls are actually craving this kind of information. So I wanted to actually pick some cards around the topic too, and just have a look into why we're sort of getting into this topic of telepathy with kids, and why these kids are appearing now. Like, why is this all of a sudden coming to the surface, even though we've had it, I guess, undisclosed for many, many years, or kept in, you know, whether it's just sort of more select community information. And I'm sure that, you know, there's people that have been doing this for hundreds of years as well. So let's have a look and see what comes up. And I will just flip these over. Let me just pop these here. So we have the Hierophant. We have my card that represents the conscious and subconscious mind. It's really interesting, actually, the cards that have come out. So the first one here, we have the Hierophant. So these kids are convening on a higher level. So we see here all of the cosmos or the stardust that we have here, this beautiful labyrinth. So the Hierophant is usually the priest, and it's someone who's in direct connection, whether it's with source or God or the universe, but we know that it's a person that sort of represents a higher state of consciousness. We then have my Knight of Wands, who for you guys that have been watching me for a while know that this is the one that Spirit's nicknamed the Tony Robbins card. And it usually represents that there is other more expanded ways of looking at things. So perhaps this is to widen our view on consciousness and to widen our view on what we've been told are the basic 5 senses. And as you know from what we said before, Phil and I both teach on expanding those senses and expanding whether it's to be able to pick up and see auras and things. We then have the Princess of Pentacles. So the Princess of Pentacles, to me, this is Aries energy. She also represents a bit more of a stubborn teenager, in that she has her own view and her way that she sort of frames reality and looks at consciousness. And a lot of people will come in trying to program her just sort of the basics for everything that they see on the 3D. So these kids are here to broaden our horizons, to break open or crack open our view on a limited point of consciousness. They're here to actually spark and create change on the earth realm. So this is to connect us all, I guess, into the telepathy internet of things. We have the 6 of Discs, so it's working. This is the card of success. They're actually achieving what it is that that they set out to do into reaching the masses. And I'm also seeing this as like little grid networks set up all around the earth. And we have the Empress as well. So this is definitely like the embodiment of all of these gifts. It's the super sensitivity to do with it all as well. She also embodies like all of the different skill sets when we look at the Empress. And this is about that there's some kind of like fertility ripening stage that we're going through at the moment. So let me just look into what this looks like when we actually are more aware of it on a bigger level. What does this look like? We've got 6 of Cups, the 5 of Swords, the Justice card, the Hanged Man, and the 6 of Wands. So we're looking at a timeline reality shift when we can actually fully tap in and start to work with these gifts ourselves. So with these beautiful kids being like a representative of what's possible, we're actually seeing where we start to timeline shift. But there's also a sadness that's coming up, whether this is to do with feeling that maybe we haven't heard these kids in the past, because I know some of the kids in the tapes, they're 20 years old when they're working out, or the parents are working out that they can do spelling. And so a lot of these kids have lived lives of not feeling that they've really been heard or being able to express or communicate. So this is about putting the right tools in the kids' hands as well. So yeah, 6 of Cups, the 5 of Swords, the Justice card, which is also known as adjustment, the Hanged Man, which for me is Jupiter energy and expanding our conscious awareness and conscious states. Then we have the 6 of Wands, which is a card of victory. So it does look like that we're going to be moving forward to break out of this simulated reality a lot more. And the kids are sort of that moment, that crack that's helping us to do this, or helping us to perceive from more of a quantum point of view rather than a fixed 3D logic, going around wearing a box on our head. They're taking the box off, so to speak.
Wonderful. Yeah, the kids are essentially to help remind us to be young and also playful and all these types of things. But, you can make all the plans you want. And unless you're a big bully, parent or something like that, you're going to have to modify your trajectory of the day based on your kids' needs and things. So they do sort of help to jostle and jar and crack the shells that we can build, because, just out of pure necessity. And so, children are a reminder, and they're also, they're great for upsetting unhelpful patterns, and even they're also creators of unhelpful patterns sometimes too. But I just want to say too, it's funny. I've actually got my deck here, and I was thinking, what would be a suitable card to talk about this, if I may, if I could bring a card out.
I would love to hear. Oh, and I just need to put a little message out while I see Emma here. Emma, sweetheart, can you please send me an email? There is a special surprise that I need to tell you about. So if you can send me to Soul Alchemy Potions, so info@soulalchemypotions.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. There is something special I need to tell you about. Sorry, Phil, just my shoes in the chat. Haven't been able to get through. So yeah, please do pick some cards or tell us about the card that you feel best represents.
Well, it's funny because I thought, well, when you said you're going to pull some cards out, I thought, well, I've got my beautiful new Rider-Waite deck here, and it doesn't fail to disappoint this one. It's a fresh deck, and when we're talking about the mental space, which apparently where these kids seem to be mostly occupying, this would generally refer to the what we refer to as, now I haven't actually shuffled this deck when I picked it, but as soon as I turned the deck over, the card that I was going to use as a demonstration was sitting on the top. Okay, that'll do.
A good sign.
Yeah. And then a couple underneath it are also absolutely perfect too. But so when we're talking about the intellect and hermetics, we're generally referring, or the mind substance, we're talking about the air element. And this is the ability to sort of make sense of things and discern and reason and judge and these types of things, And what's interesting is that underneath that card was something also very suitable, which is this King of Cups here. Now you can see in the background of this card here, there is a bit of a turbulent ocean situation going on, but he's sitting there pretty relaxed and chill. Now, how is this useful? Well, like I said to you, if your mind is turbulent, that's going to project out into the environment, and that's going to affect people, especially if you're working on developing potency in your skills. Like I said, refinement and empowerment have to run hand in hand. There's a qualitative and a quantitative conversation, quality and quantity. Before you, like I said, you want your quantity is your rocket booster, and the quality is the refined direction in which you point yourself. Now, the next card is absolutely perfect as well, because now we're talking about the Devil card, which makes us think about aspects of ourselves that we can improve upon, and where we're allowing what we might call our base instincts to get in the way of making good choices. We're letting the lower animal, if you will, run the show. And there's lower aspects. In Hermetics, we have the three bodies, or the three Dantian in the Taoist terminology. And each one of these bodies has a vibrational scale inside of it. There's the low end of the spectrum and the higher end of the spectrum. There's low things and there's higher vibrating things. And then just because there's a couple more, I'll make it 5 because that's a good number for this. The next one is another major, which is this Judgment card here, which is essentially what's going on here is that there is an awakening of understanding and, what we might call a call to arms in some way, or a call to take upon ourselves. I mean, I'm not going to go into the sort of more deep esoteric meanings of these cards. I'm just keen to play along here and go, let's just see what the deck comes up with. But if you look here, we can see that there's a higher force here wakening up maybe previously asleep aspects of ourselves. And this is happening en masse. I'm not, like we know that there is like I said, when there's a big push, when the jackboot comes down, you cannot else but have an equal and opposite reaction to a point. You can't, you push on the seesaw and the other side goes up. You can try and keep the other side down, but at some point it's a limited hangout, And then the final one I'll pull out is the Seven of Cups, okay, where we suddenly go, oh my gosh, now we have to choose, what we do with what we've got. And, it's everything's a double-edged sword. And if you have a look at this one here, it might be a bit hard to see. Hang on, I'll bring it up to the thing here. But you can see there's a little skull here on this cup here. Okay. And so, we can see that there's all of these delectable ideas and things that we can employ and play with, but we have to choose carefully because, in every bag of grapes, there's always going to be a couple of dodgy ones, and well, we can think something's a good idea. It's always good just to take the high road, and no matter how you occupy yourself. And then I'll just call this, we'll make it 6 because that's the hexagon. That'll do. We have this card here where we've got something solid, we've got it, and we've got something behind us, and now we've got this new thing, and we're seeing, okay, how can we take this thing and maybe help to improve the world? And like I said, I'm reading these in context to the conversation, because, you know, there is a self-correcting nature to the underlying forces at work here. There is an entropy, and that gives us the reason to apply effort and stress to make things right. But there is an underlying desire for things to improve as well. So we are forced. Chaos has to precede order. So, you know, these kids are coming out and they're saying, hey, and I tell you what, they're not quiet. These kids are hard to deal with, you know, like I've got a nephew who's on the spectrum, and man, you know, he's incredible. Like he was reading high school physics books around the age of 10. This kid is he is incredibly intelligent. He's got instant recall on stuff you would just like not believe, right? But he's been a handful. And this, you know, this is almost like, I don't know if I want to use the word evolution, but there's a desire for a kind of an evolution, and it's not quiet, you know, it wants to be heard. It's like, no, you can't keep pushing this down. There are natural forces at work that are far greater than anything one individual can potentially do. You know, I'm not depriving us of our own divine internal spark here, but you got to remember, the wheel works of nature operate under immutable laws, and you know, if you can't break the law is the law. You can kind of use laws against other laws in a way, but the bottom line is that we're on the precipice, I think, of having to accept a little bit that there is a bigger story going on. You got to remember, in the not so distant past, every village had a shaman or a witch doctor or a cunning woman or someone who was aware of these things. And in other cultures, they're like, oh yeah, is he psychic, is he? Well, we've got an opportunity for that. We usually send them off to the monastery and they become in service of the spiritual thing. In the West, it's a little different. Oh, you're into that spiritual stuff, well, off to church, or are you one of them New Ages, or you know, like there's all these really kind of derogatory and sometimes just convenient labels to just partition things off. And that's unfortunate, but we're kind of being forced to reevaluate how we interpret and translate these things that appeal to our sense of credibility, because these people are going to great lengths to reproduce these results in a credible, robust scientific methodology. And anyway, that's my spell.
Well, it's interesting for, you know, reading for thousands of people like I have, and especially focusing on like the galactic starseed side of things and meeting a lot of souls that come in with a higher bandwidth of consciousness. What I've noticed is there's certain places that people may have had lifetimes, or there's a certain aspect of being a hybrid where they've got, you know, higher types or different forms of DNA that are merging with a human DNA. There's a particular one that comes up time and time again, which I won't get into too much, but what I see is that it's predominantly teachers, speech pathologists, midwives, gynecologists that are working with children and babies that have these hybrid genetics. So I do think that there is some kind of a soul contract with some of these beautiful souls that are working with these kids, that they are perhaps, you know, a little bit different or a little bit extraordinary themselves. So I just wanted to mention that I do feel that the people that are working with these kids, there is some kind of a soul contract to help them get that message out or that voice out. And I just want to share too, there was a past show that I did. If you go into the psychic playlist that I've got just up here, psychic training, you might be able to see it just blinking on and off my screen. There was a beautiful lady who is in the upper part of, I think it was Queensland, Leonie Alpert, and she is teaching kids how to sense with the blindfolds on. So there are other ways too. I've also trained in Shishida method training, and my kids also did Shishida method training. And for these kids, when they're engaged and when you've got them excited, they can get like, I remember my son at 6 months old getting 6 out of 6 things right in terms of, asking in a black bag, you would put a blue teddy and a red teddy, and you would say, pull out the one that feels warm. And every time pulling out the red one until he would get bored, and then we would move on to something else. But these kids, what's important is that we're also working and communicating in utero. So Shishida, Makoto Shishida, before he passed, I was lucky enough to attend one of his seminars here in Australia. And he said the most important thing is love. So this is what grows a whole healthy, genius, in his words, what he was translating from Japanese into English. And he said that this begins even before conception. And we know that biology of belief, Bruce Lipton's work, it's about 3 months before conception that there's an imprint on the egg and there's an imprint on the sperm that takes place. So I really do think that we are, even with the craziness and some of the toxicity that we see in the world at the moment, we can't ignore the beautiful, positive, and scientific information that's giving it more validation to spirituality. So I think we're getting back to where spirituality and science are starting to merge again. If you look for it, it's very obvious, and you can see it with things like the telepathy tapes. But just wanted to really convey that love is one of the most important things to do with healthy whole brain development, as well as connecting on a telepathic level, whether you're talking to animals or talking to some of these amazing kids. And this is something you guys can try at home too. There are people that have experienced connection with meeting some of these beautiful kids on the hill psychically. So download the telepathy tapes, have a listen, and maybe perhaps before going off to bed, connect to this place, the hill, and maybe just introduce yourself. Maybe pop forward that beautiful heart that you guys have in our community and just introduce yourself. A lot of these kids are wanting to know or wanting to connect with people that can help spread their message. So it's nice for them to also know that we're gathering in numbers. And a lot of these kids have also experienced exactly what I just described, in more people coming to the hill. And they're talking about that there's, adults that are also coming to the hill too. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, and thoughts on connecting with not just some of these kids, but with each other as well?
So any kind of edge you can have develop within yourself to help you navigate the landscape that is, sometimes we get in the carpet pulled out from under our feet. And if we can have some sort of foresight, because trust me, whenever you hear things like, oh, no, that, I think it was Project Stargate, or, any of those kinds of programs that were run by the US and any of the other countries as well, but especially the one in the US where they said, yeah, no, we pumped 20 million in and we ran it for 25 years, but we didn't really get any results. And it's like, right, you ran it for 20 years or 25 years and you got no results. Did it have to run for 25 years for you to finally make it? Actually, no. These things are like, you want any edge you can get, especially when it comes to, espionage or any of these types of things. Now, as far as the general public goes, being able to collect a greater amount of data and a higher quality of data to improve your decision making is going to result in, for starters, a higher quality of life. But it's also going to contribute, you're going to be a tuning fork yourself. And the better you get at stuff, you become what you might refer to as an alpha tuning fork. And so you can actually influence others. Now, we don't necessarily want to be consciously going around going, all right, I'm going to start waking people up, because there's some people aren't supposed to be healed. Some people aren't supposed to be woken up, but there is, you kind of got to, like, on the flip side, there's this thing about making information available so people can have access to it and find it. But where am I going with this? I'm sort of wandering around. I'm just sort of back and going, I'm taking one step, two step, but you know, when it comes to, if you find yourself suddenly having a mind-to-mind connection with someone, what we do in Hermetics is that when we encounter a new thing, sometimes before we intend or apply our will to it, our first method of what we do when we encounter anything is just to pay attention to it, so that we can kind of understand it. You don't necessarily want to be all brash and, you know, shouting it from the rooftops, and that there's a reason why we have a pillar of silence in the high sciences, you know, a pillar of silence. So, you know, if you start encountering this extra flow of data from a loved one or something like that, you know, come up with some games or some kind of interactive method that you can start having this kind of, I guess, like there's a part of you that's going to be like, oh, this is too much, can't, you know, whatever. Even if you're into it, I think that playing guessing games, and I do this on my channel a bit too, where I'll just get the cards out. Like I've got this. So here's a fun one. Actually, I'll tell you about this right now if you like. So I've got a box of cards there. There's 5 decks of matched cards in here. They're just normal playing cards. And what it happens is it's a bit of a job shuffling these. I've got to say, it's a bit of a job. There's 125 cards here, I think it is, or something like that. But 250. 5 times 50. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But what happens is that you can sometimes have the same card come out twice. But you start off with something easy, like red or black, and you really relax. You don't put too much pressure on the situation, because you can help for these natural abilities to flower through compounding success, through basically aiming towards the low-hanging fruit. Because you might be like, far out, I just got like 9 out of 10 of those right. Isn't that interesting? And then the next time I got 1 out of 10. Or you might not get any right. If you don't get any right any of the time, that says something as well. It doesn't mean you're bad at it. It might just be like that what's standing out to you is the other thing, not the thing that you want. And so that might be an internal process that you need to sort of evaluate. But you can increase the complexity of this process by choosing the suits next. So that's 1 out of 4 rather than 1 out of 2. And then you've got, and because these are born of the tarot deck, there's a whole conversation about picking up, does the card feel hot? Or maybe it's a club, which is usually associated with the wands or the fire element. Does it feel light? Like an air element card, which would be the spades, and so on and so forth. And so you'll find that you have the ability to pick up on data. It could be abstract more. It's probably outside of the scope of this conversation to go into. But
I think that would be great for a show. We could literally do a whole show on that too.
Yeah, well, look, hey, I can ramble on about this for a bit, but as far as the hill goes, if you suddenly find yourself like in a mental room, if you will, in a spaceless environment where there's just information, because for those of you who have listened to the tapes, you'll hear them talk about, like I said, it's dimensionless, right?
Yeah.
But they don't hear words in their head so much. It's more like there's a packet of understanding rather than just making up words. And what we do here on the physical, we write things down. We take these ideas and we pull them through and write them down, right? Now, like I said, you start getting this data incoming, you're like, wow, that's interesting, because before you can really do something with something, you kind of have to learn how to get your fingers around it by just sort of like observing it in a lot of cases. But I think that just exploring this with, like I said, if the data's coming in, if you've got a relationship, like I've got a mate up the road who is always just like saying stuff before she even says it. She's thinking it and it comes out. And it's like, well, there's ways to explore that in a positive way to help flower that. Because sometimes, this can be a fire hose that's just going all over the place. You need to learn how to get a handle on it, because hypersensitive people can end up becoming schizophrenic, or they could become, other types of things, as they haven't learned to handle this big like this, this male, what's the word for it? The floodgates are open. It's like, you've got to learn how to be in control of the flow. You've got to have a regulator valve on your input. That's why I think, so
I've just realized we've just gone over the hour, so I will start to wrap things up. But what you were talking about, like to do with downloading packets of information, that's exactly what I experienced. So usually for me, I'll get into that flow state or that space. And, when I was younger, it might have been harder to get a handle on, but it can be something as simple as just like shuffling your deck. Whatever it is that's an anchor for you to drop in to more of who you are, or more of that part of you that exists in that other space. But little things like psychometry can help. Touching something can provide an anchor or a psychic bridge or gateway into more information. So I think we could do another show on that too. We've got my chickens joining us that are just in the yard out there. But I just want to pop up, for those of you that missed where it is that you can go over to the telepathytapes.com. And it's produced by Kai Dickens. She's done an absolutely wonderful job. And I just want to remind you guys that we do have, with each purchase of a potion at the moment, and I'm that witch today. And I've got my little witch's hat here actually from the other day. A little bit of fun. But with each purchase, you will get sent a link to our beautiful event, which is part of our community. So let me just bring up the event page, more information to do with our community here. But this is our event that we're having. It's going to be on the new moon, and that is on the 29th of January. So we're going to have some time together. If you want, you can even pop yourself up on the screen. It's going to be a meeting room in Zoom that you guys are invited to, and it's going to be so much fun to meditate together. We're going to talk about manifestation. We're going to collectively as a group be able to almost catch up in the physical sense, but it's going to be online. But we're going to share what it is that we want to manifest for 2025, and we're going to come together. And it's a really beautiful, transformative space and transformative energy that we started to play with last year at Soul Alchemy Potions. So please get your potion, choose what it is that you want to work with, and we look forward to seeing you there. Phil and I also have our different services available. So I have my readings available, and you can see I have the Learn How to Read Auras course is also available. And if you come back into Maison Jupiter, you will also see the readings available using the discount code, or it must be on the other link. But anyway, you can use the discount code Jupiter to receive 10% off. And we are only one subscriber away from hitting 5,000. So I just want to say a huge shout out to our beautiful community, and especially to Tim, who drew my attention to just how close we were, and he helped to bump it up. So thank you so much, Tim. I know you're at work right now. And I just want to remind you guys that Phil has his Substack. So go check that out. Have a look at and explore. There's so many different things to check out there. And you also are growing your YouTube as well. And I'll leave your bookings one up. Was there something you wanted to say to the audience just before we go?
I want to say thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. And look, I'm just grateful to be able to be, part of this community. You're a wonderful audience. I've been watching the comments, very supportive, very kind, very interested and intrigued in the conversation. And thank you for sharing my offerings and my contact points as well. So, if you are interested in stuff, I tell you what, just quickly, I've got some pretty interesting stuff coming up on my YouTube channel. And so if you aren't already, go over there and hit the subscribe button, because I've got some things coming up I don't think anyone's done in this particular realm. And I won't say anything yet because I'll wait till I've got it done. But if you just go to Phil Rice NZ, punch that into YouTube, you should see my mug come up there, and you can just hit that subscribe. I've also, like I said, I've just I'm going to be offering some classes this year too. I'm probably going to be setting that up. And the next week or the following week, I'll be running an online dojo for people who want to learn about the more esoteric sort of aspect of Reiki from someone who wants to do regular daily practices for body development and cultivation of the vital force, and how you can benefit from that. And this is well prior to even doing hands-on healing. I don't think that people will probably come across, this is going to be quite a unique take on Reiki from a Hermetic point of view, and I think it'll be quite refreshing for people who have done a lot of workshops, but maybe they're still feeling a little bit like, yeah, I still don't think I get it, because I haven't been satisfied by a lot of what I've read and seen. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you tuning in with your time and your kind ear, because I know that I talk a lot. So
It's always interesting, especially when you dip into the hermetic side of it. It's just a refreshing look and a take on the topic that we talked about today. So thank you so much to you, Phil, my lovely friend, and also thank you so much to our beautiful audience. And I just saw Lorianne's comment about light language. We might save that for the weekend. I've just popped up the link on YouTube for the Mystical Oracle show, which we'll be doing live on Sunday. So that's at lunchtime. It's the same time as what today started here. So whatever time that is, it might be 8 p.m., I think, in the Eastern time zone. So I will see you guys for a live reading. We're going to dip into the astrology for the week as well. And we're going to look into cards and advice for the week. So thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you guys over on the weekend. Bye.